John 3 verses 4 and 5. In him there was no sin. Kai hamartia in auto uk estin. No sin. It's the Greek kind of emphasizes it. When you think about sin, which is defined in this passage as lawlessness, breaking, the transgression of a known law, the voluntary breaking of something that you know to be wrong. There's two parts to sin. One is the deed itself, and the other is the thought that precedes the deed. And those two parts have to be in motion for a sin to be committed. Like, for example, the sin of murder. Like, there's two guys in the Old Testament who considered murder. One was Saul, and the other one was David. And Saul, in a fit of rage, picks up his javelin and flings it at flings it at David, and it misses and it lands quivering in the wall beside him. And David, a little later, has the opportunity to kill Saul, and Saul is lying there in front of him, and his men are urging him to kill him, and he says, "No, I can't. I can't lift my hand up against the anointed one." And so one of them has the intention in his heart and misses, and the other one has the thought in his mind and decides against it. So which one's the murderer? Well, Jesus said, if you think in your mind it's as bad as doing it, Saul's the murderer. And David indulged a wrong thought but mastered it. And sometimes there's a rising of an inclination to commit a sin, isn't there? But it's not a sin by itself. And that passes on to a guilty resolve to do it. And then it's done. The deed's done. So, what about Jesus? Where does he come into that picture of a sin which is composed of deed and thought? Was he free from desire as well as free from act? And when you think about this, when he made that incredible claim before all those people, he says, "Which of you convicts me of sin?" The people who are listening are made up of three groups, you might say. The people who are his enemies, people who are his friends, and the people who were indifferent to him, thought nothing of it. So think of his enemies. Think of this, that for 3 long years the Pharisees were watching him like a victim, hiding behind every tree with a notepad at the ready, and they're mingling in every crowd, and they're trying to get some kind of a rise out of him, trying to examine him and find some hook on which they can bring a just cause against him. And when they finally get him, they say he's shown disrespect to the Roman governor. He's not good at our ways. He's defiled the temple. They're very, very, very small stuff. And Pilate pronounces their accusation null and void. Remember, Pilate is a professional arbitrator. That's what he's there for, is to seek out and examine problems in his country where he's the provincial governor and sort them out. He's good at his job. He's the best, right? He can't find anything to sort Jesus out with. And what about Judas? If there had been one thing that Jesus had done wrong, Judas could have used that as a sop to his own terrible sense of remorse. But what made his life insufferable was this line that the Bible says, "He has betrayed innocent blood." Judas knew that Jesus was innocent of sin, and he couldn't live with it. Okay, that's the people who were there in the Bible as Jesus' enemies, you might say. What about those who were indifferent to him? Well, you could argue that Pilate himself, in a sense, was indifferent. The contemporary records say that he was austere and cruel, a man of firm resolve who would quite cheerfully crucify hundreds of innocent lives if it would serve the purposes of Rome. And yet, in this case, the cruel man becomes timid, and he loses his resolve, and he prevaricates, and he doesn't know what to do with Jesus. He was filled with the sense that that innocence was standing before him, and his wife had said to him, and it's very important what wives say to the husbands. He says, had nothing to do with that innocent man. They couldn't find anything wrong with Jesus, either in act or, as far as they could tell, in desire. What about his friends? Now surely, if your enemies can't find anything wrong with you, and people who are indifferent to you, the people who really know you, the people with whom you spend your unguarded moments, they're the ones who could really pull a fast one and reveal your deep, darkest secrets to the Sunday newspapers. They're the ones that the tabloid reporters are interested in interviewing, the little snippets of scandal and gossip. And there's nothing. People who've known him since his childhood, like his cousin, people who've known him all his short life, if there'd been any wrongdoing, any little bit, any blemish in his purity. And yet, even when Jesus comes before John the Baptist, who's known him since his infancy, he says, I have need to be baptized of you, and do you come to me? He was bowing before him. You remember Peter bowing before him, depart from me, Lord, because I am a sinful man. With the application of thinking, and you are not. And that's the testimony. That's the testimony of those closest to Jesus. Which of you accuses me of sin? They looked into this man's life. And so, astonishing as it may seem, paradoxical as it may seem, because Jesus was more human than we are. Isn't that interesting? He was more human because the human psyche was not designed for sin. Sin is an unpleasant extra that's invaded in. It's a cancer. It's a virus that's come in. But Jesus was completely human because he was without sin. Think about it, and we'll think some more on another time. God bless you.